Hey, would you like early access to the GoLoco podcast? If so, please support me on Patreon. If you support me on Patreon, you'll get early access to any podcast or possible future projects in the future. That's patreon.com/GoLocoPod. That's patreon.com/GOLOCOPOD. Thanks, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, everyone. My name is Joven, and you're listening to the GoLoco podcast, a podcast where I will talk about a variety of topics including life, relationships, geek culture, sports, and much more. And since this is the first or inaugural episode of this podcast, I've actually decided to open up to you guys about myself so you guys get to know a little bit more about me and what I'm all about. And in actuality, this podcast will be talking about my life dealing with Graves' disease. So, what is Graves' disease, you may ask? Well, let me explain my situation and we'll get right into it. So, this all started about, I'd say around a year ago. I was trying to, lose weight, trying to be healthy, try to lose some fat, trying to build some muscle, some strength. So, in order to do this, I put myself in a caloric deficit in which I'm eating less calories than I'm expending. I ate more protein. I was looking more on my diet. I went to the gym about 4 to 6 times a week. Did a good mix of trying to do weightlifting, cardio. At first, I was dropping weight slowly, gradually, and I was building strength, which is what you're supposed to be doing when you're doing a program like what I was under. But around the start of fall, I would say, around maybe August or September, I started dropping weight faster and faster, and by I'd say November I was down from 185 all the way down to 170 in only a few weeks. And while this might seem good, it was kind of alarming, though I didn't think too much of it. But looking back it was definitely something I should have paid more attention to. So during my birthday that year, my parents actually gave me a Fitbit to keep track of, my heart rate, all my steps, just to keep track of time, because I haven't had a watch in a while. I usually wear a watch, but mine had broke, so that's why they got me the Fitbit. And when I set it up, it was telling me that my resting heart rate was 90 beats per minute, which I thought it was kind of broken, but when other people started to try it on, theirs were close to 60 or 70 beats per minute. So it was kind of strange looking at that number. And that's at some point even went up all the way to 101 beats per minute, my heart rate, even though I was just sitting in class or just chilling with friends. It was definitely something I noticed, but again, I didn't pay too much attention to it. Other things I should have noticed at that time was that I was getting much more irritated. I was getting sensitive to heat, so I was basically always trying to get the AC turned on even when it was only 70, 80 degrees outside. I started having not major, but like tremors in my hands to the point where it was noticeable, in which I would just be sitting down resting and yet my hands were jittering all over the place and I had no explanation for it. I would try to calm down, I would breathe, and even though I felt relaxed, my hands were still like jittering and tremoring, and it was kind of weird because people were starting to point it out to me, but again, I didn't think too much of it because it was something that came gradually, something I didn't notice right away. So went to the doctor for my annual checkup, and I found out my blood pressure was actually pretty high. So they convinced me to try to do a blood test just to check, is there something wrong in your blood? Is everything healthy? Why do you have such high blood pressure when you have no prior history to having any high blood pressure or irregular heartbeat or anything like that? So they told me, take a blood test and they'll see. And once I took that blood test, I went to a doctor known as an endocrinologist who, based on my test results, diagnosed me with what I know now as Graves' disease. So what is Graves' disease? Well, Graves' disease is a form of hyperthyroidism. Graves' disease itself is an autoimmune disorder which leads to the overproduction of the thyroid hormone. A thyroid hormone is a hormone obviously produced from your thyroid located in your neck. It regulates the body's metabolic rate, heart and digestive functions, muscle control, brain development, mood, bone maintenance, among other things. It uses iodine from your diet to produce the thyroid hormone itself. So the symptoms that I experienced that led them to figuring out that I had hyperthyroidism and specifically Graves' disease outside of my blood test results were that I had suffered from anxiety and irritability. I had tremors in my hands. I was sensitive to heat. I had rapid weight loss. My thyroid gland had become enlarged. My eyes had slightly bulged out of their sockets, also known as Graves. I'm gonna butcher this. Graves ophthalmopathy, and I also had a irregular and rapid heartbeat, which led to my high blood pressure results. So once they found out what I had three choices or three options on how I could treat the disease. The first option was a radioactive iodine treatment. So what would happen in this is what I would take a radioactive iodine pill. So a pill of iodine that obviously had become radioactive, and I would take that, and the thyroid would use the radioactive iodine to try and make its hormone, but instead the iodine would slowly kill the thyroid over the course of several weeks to several months. And over the course of the first few days, I would be radioactive, similar to how a cancer patient would be radioactive after their radiation therapy. And this will likely would have gave me hypothyroidism, since my thyroid would no longer be functioning or barely functioning. Hypothyroidism is the thyroid not creating enough or any thyroid hormone, and I would have to take thyroid replacement for basically the rest of my life. The second option was surgery, which would just remove the thyroid altogether, and in this option I would also have to take thyroid replacement, hormone replacement, so I could live a functioning life. The third option, which is the option that I opted for, was to take a anti-thyroid medication, in my case methimazole. This would significantly reduce the amount of hormone that my thyroid could produce by blocking its ability to create that hormone. And over the course of a little over a year, I would slowly reduce the dosage for that would be about 1 to 2 years. And as the dosage goes down, the hope is that my disease would burn itself out, and when I was to be released from taking this medicine, my thyroid would be functioning normally again, and I would be in remission. So that's what I am doing right now. So I started methimazole a few months ago, and right now my symptoms for Graves' disease have all but disappeared. But I did have a few discomforts the first few weeks to few months on taking the medication. So due to my Graves' disease, my muscles, my bone structure, everything like that had been forced to go through a high metabolic rate, in which it was basically getting destroyed faster than it could rebuild. So by the time I started taking my medication, my muscles and joints had become weak to the point where it was hard to do anything in rapid movement. So I couldn't jump without possibly hurting myself, getting a cramp, possibly feeling like I pulled a muscle. I couldn't do any quick movements. So it was really, the pain at some points was so bad that I could barely move, that I was at almost to the point of crying, shouting, and I just needed to relax for a few minutes because it would get that bad. But now all those aches and pains have basically gone away as I went back into lifting and getting my strength and my muscles back up, and now I'm actually stronger than I was prior to my disease flaring up. So that's something that I'm proud of, because now I know that my muscles are starting to be able to be built again. And yeah, so I was able to gain my weight back and a little more, because obviously I had been lifting, and from 170 I'm now at 215, a little higher than I want to be. And I do want to cut, but due to my medication basically blocking my thyroid function for creating its hormone, it's really hard to lose weight at the moment or lose fat. So even though I am eating little less than before, eating healthier, it's really hard to lose weight. So at this point, I'm just trying to maintain, trying to build muscle, trying to get my cardiovascular health in check. So when I hopefully do get off this medication, I'm able to slowly reduce my fat, reduce my weight, and get to a lean body physique that I really want to strive for. And looking back at the pictures I had over the course of the back end of last year, I really should have noticed that there was something wrong with me, because even though I was technically still overweight for my height, I had looked like a skeleton. My eyes were both sunken, and yet my eyes are also bulging out. I looked basically like I was on drugs, or maybe if I was on constant withdrawal. And some people actually thought that I was doing drugs, but in reality, it was just because of my disease. The tremors, my irritability, it just all pointed to someone who was doing drugs. But in reality, I was just suffering from a disease that I didn't even know I was suffering from. And yeah, it was like a very confusing experience in my life, because I never experienced anything like that. I don't know too many people who suffer from hypothyroidism or Graves' disease, though, as I must point out, it is a very common disease and an easily treatable one. So yeah, typically Graves' disease affects those under 40, so you'll know if you have it pretty early on in your lifetime. And typically it affects women, but it can affect men, as obviously I am male. But it is definitely a disease that is relatively common in the population of the world. And if you yourself are feeling that any of the symptoms I mentioned are things that you might be experiencing, do some research, look up hyperthyroidism, look up Graves' disease, try to consult with your doctor, take a blood test, just check to make sure if your hormone for your thyroid is in check. Because even though this disease is common and it's very treatable, if left unchecked for a long period of time, it could lead to massive health risks in the future. Obviously, the irregular heartbeat and the rapid irregular heartbeat could lead to some heart problems down the line, and other symptoms just could, like your muscles and bones slowly degrading, that could lead to just something happening to you that you won't be able to function well muscle bone wise. Obviously, anxiety and irritability are up high, so obviously you're gonna be more irritated. You're gonna be a hindrance to yourself and the people around you. Your anxiety will be up. You'll be overthinking everything. And also all that also led to me even having less focus. So I wasn't focusing well on my classes. I wasn't doing as well as I thought I would. I would try not to distract myself, but for some reason I was just getting easily distracted while in class, while I was actively trying to listen to my professors, listening to other students. It was just not a good time for me. And some people might say, oh, the weight loss seems pretty good, but in reality it was, yeah, even though I was trying to lose weight, I looked like a skeleton. Like I was still skinny fat, even more skinny fat than before. I had now looked like I was like suffering. I would look like as I said, a skeleton, a zombie. I didn't look healthy. I didn't feel healthy. But because it was a disease that was slowly affecting me, it wasn't something that all of a sudden, oh no, I tore my ACL or did something that you can tell, you can diagnose. It's something that without me getting a Fitbit, without me consulting with my doctor, without me taking a blood test, I probably would have never found out, or at least not found out until much later. And I might have had other health problems may have arisen because of it, and it would not have been a good time for me, my family, my friends. It was not a good time. So if you're thinking that you possibly have hyperthyroidism or Graves' disease, first of all, don't self-diagnose. But if you have the suspicion that you could be suffering from it, consult with your doctor, get a blood test, and take the necessary steps that you think you should take, because this disease is no joke. It can really affect your lifestyle, and it's something that now that I know exists and now that I know how it feels, is something that I wish gets talked about more, because it's not one of those big diseases that everyone knows about. Oh, it's like cancer, it's like HIV or anything like that, but it is a disease that is relatively common even in the US, but it's something that's easily treatable. So it's just, yeah, I just wish that if I had known about it, maybe I would have thought, oh, it could be this disease. Maybe I should go to get that checked. And I'm lucky that I was able to catch it up early on. But if I hadn't, I could have, like, a few years from now, led to some heart problems or some liver problems or something going wrong with me that I would have only found out would have been easily treatable years prior if I had known and if I had gotten it checked. So yeah, right now that's my life with it. I still have a few months to maybe even almost a year before I get off my medication. So at that point, I will update you all on how my progress is doing. And hopefully this disease gets burned out. Hopefully I'll be in remission. And speaking of remission, I say remission because it is a disease, an autoimmune disease. So it is something that your body is for some reason doing to itself, hurting itself. So a medication is supposed to burn out my disease, supposed to like limit the amount of thyroid hormone being produced to the point where if I were to get off it, my thyroid would be acting at a relatively normal level again. But my disease could flare up again, whether that be a few years from then or maybe even like 50 years from then, it could come back. And at that point, I'll probably opt for either the iodine treatment or the surgery, because it's just it's probably not worth it to try to do the medication again. Not that it wouldn't work, it's just that, okay, now I know it's come back. I know these other two methods will be faster for me to get rid of it. I don't have to worry about it coming back. And even though I would have to take thyroid replacement pills for the rest of my life, that's a sacrifice I would be willing to take, hopefully, at that time. And yeah, that's my life with Graves' disease at the moment. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Next episode will be quite a doozy of a one, so be on the lookout. If you can, please support me on Patreon. That's patreon.com/GoLocoPod. And hope you guys tune in next time. Peace out, y'all.